Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to The Takeout. First, what the Supreme Court said. If it had approved President Trump's unique, and that's being charitable, interpretation of the 1977 International Economic Emergencies Powers Act, that would represent a transformative expansion of presidential authority over tariff policy, the words of the court. The president, the court ruled, must point to clear congressional authorization to justify his extraordinary assertion of that power. He cannot. Second, what the president said.
It's my opinion that the court has been swayed by foreign interests and a political movement that is far smaller than people would ever think. They're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats, and not that this should have anything at all to do with it. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution.
Remember, Rhino stands for Republican in name only, a partisan slander rarely, if ever, applied to members of the Supreme Court. Odder still, President Trump leveled that slander against two of his own appointees, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, both of whom sided with the majority. Also, to hear the president tell it, opposing him on tariffs is an act of disloyalty to the Constitution, even though the Constitution in Article 1 clearly states all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. As the president frequently reminds us, tariffs raise revenue. Now, Congress has given presidents some tariff powers. They're constrained and they have kind of a process behind them. Trump said today he will use those powers, more or less acknowledging why he didn't employ these readily available and legally more defensible alternatives. They took too much time and restrained his ability to levy tariffs on a whim. So, to sum up, tariffs will stay in many different forms. The ones the Supreme Court overturned will now be subject to refund litigation. New tariffs, under those laws I just mentioned, will go through an investigatory process. What's changed most fundamentally? There will be no more market-rattling tariffs announced on social media on some random Friday night. We start tonight with Jan Crawford. Jan, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Summarize what the majority said, what the dissent said, because the dissenters got the president's praise.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, two of those justices in the majority were his appointees. And the Chief Justice, of course, John Roberts, was the one who wrote the decision that he loved 2 years ago on presidential immunity. So, you know, now
these things go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats made some of the same arguments we heard from Trump today when they were on the other side. So, but, you know, the justices in that majority decision basically said that this emergency trade law that Trump was pointing to didn't authorize tariffs. It said presidents could regulate imports and a bunch of other things, but nowhere does it say presidents can impose
historically
tariffs.
Been used for sanctions and the freezing of assets.
Correct. And so, you know, that was a pretty straightforward opinion. The liberals and the conservatives joining together, they had different reasons for how they got to that bottom line. But this law just didn't authorize Trump to do what it said he did. The dissenting justices, led by another Trump appointee, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, said absolutely it does. The law gives presidents the power to prohibit imports. So if it gives him the power to prohibit imports, surely it gives him the power to put a few tariffs down. That it's just common sense. And then Justice Kavanaugh, writing for the main dissenters, pointed out that there's all these other laws that Trump could turn to. Although, as you suggested, there's some more procedural hoops. And I think the problem with that is, as you rightly point out, is that they take more time. You've got to go through these hoops to do it, and there are time limits. The one he's cited today that he's immediately doing is a 5-month time limit, unless Congress approves it. And it also has a cap of 10%. So that really takes away Trump's power to kind of use this hammer to threaten 50% tariffs, indefinite tariffs, which is what he was doing under the emergency law. These laws just are not going to be as effective for him.
And before I let you go, Jan, you watch the court very closely. In order of magnitude, how would you rate this particular majority opinion in relation to this policy initiative from this White House?
Oh, I think this is one of the most significant Supreme Court losses for a U.S. president. And why I say that is because you can see from Trump's reaction today. I mean, he is furious at certainly the three conservatives, but just, you know, not pulling any punches with the whole court. He's been beating this drum for months now that he had to win this case. This was really the cornerstone of his economic policy. Courts typically That's a pretty big ask. We saw when President Obama had his signature piece of legislation, the Affordable Care Act, that the Supreme Court pulled back. The Chief Justice refused to go along with that. They did not strike that down. So for the Supreme Court, this Supreme Court, 3 conservatives joining 3 liberals to really kind of invalidate a foundational part of the president's economic agenda. There are other tariffs and there are other things he can use, but this was the ball game in a way. That is a highly significant loss for a president, and I think you've got to put it right up there with some of the big losses, going back to whether presidents could seize the steel mills or whether they would have to turn over their notes, or claim executive privilege.
Jan Crawford, I really appreciate that last bit of context. Thank you so very much. Our Willie James Inman joins us now from the White House in the North Lawn. You can see him now. So lots of reaction from the White House, and the president said there are going to be some other tariffs and that he will press on.
Yeah, that's right, Major. And the president continuing that tariff threat. Remember, these tariffs were in large part not only part of the president's economic agenda, but his foreign policy as well. He's used these tariffs to, as he puts it, end wars and solve other problems around the world. And the Supreme Court really just took away his lever to raise and lower those tariffs on a whim from the Oval Office. We, of course, know, as Jan perfectly pointed out, the tariffs, a baseline tariff of 10% on global goods, has limits to it. The president is seemingly saying that he doesn't need Congress for these tariffs, but he certainly will need Congress if he wants to extend these 10% tariffs that he has put in place. In 5 months, he will need Congress's buy-in to do just that. On top of that, there are other tariffs that the president is targeting, other powers that he's going to seek to use that require a lot more research and input and investigation in terms of how he will be able to go about doing that. They have national security concerns with some of those tariffs. Some of them will have to be country-specific or industry or specific to certain goods. So it will take a lot more time for the president to be able to go about his tariff policy push, even though, as the Supreme Court put it today, the president doesn't have this authority. Americans certainly agree in large part with this tariff push against it, rather. They don't want to see these tariffs. A majority of Americans, if you look at public polling, including our own, don't want to see these tariffs, believe that the president is not focusing enough on lowering prices. I anticipate we'll see him out there on the road a bit more ahead of the midterms, talking about not only those prices, but this tariff policy. Oftentimes he'll talk about tariffs and how they've helped American industry, although we have seen some of those prices go up, Major.
Willie James Inman at the White House. Thanks so very much.